XCSoar open source glide computer software. And it's a really, really powerful tool, and it's got the advantage in that it's open source, so a lot of geeky glider people have been improving it for a long time, and it's free. So it does lots of great things for us. Doesn't cost us anything, and it keeps on getting improved, I guess. So there's some of the features. It gives us our moving map display, terrain, topography. It's got some tools to actually show you how far it thinks you can glide to. It lets you see where you are in relationship to airspace and waypoints and tasks. It's got some glide computer functions in it, so it will give you some advice about how fast to go and which way to point the thing. All presented in some really useful info boxes. If you want to, before or after the flight, you can ask it for some analysis. And the last thing it does is it generates a log file of your flight, so you can relive the glory later on. So what do you need to get going? You need a device, and most of us have a phone. It also works on any Android device, so phones, tablets. You can see this is my cheap Chinese Miju phone, works just fine. I also have used this Samsung tablet, which I got at a conference. Works really well for XCSoar. A couple other devices. If you've got a Windows-based PDA or PNA, there's software for that. And people have made book readers work with it quite well. I think Will Camp had a book reader which is black and white but very readable in the sunlight that he had made work with XCSoar. Unfortunately for the lovers of all things Apple, it is not supported for Apple.
Not quite true, Dave.
That's what the website says. I think there is a version that you can download it onto an Apple computer, the sort of trial thing, but I don't think it works for mobile things. But I might be wrong. Have you got it going on Apple, Tim?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated because it's not in the App Store, but it is possible. But generally, I would not recommend it unless you're really geeky.
Okay. Well, there you have it. If you want to work it on your Apple device, see Tim. There you go. Now, once you have your device, you need some way to put it somewhere where you can see it. These RAM devices, which work on suction cups or RAM balls, are quite good. Some people find some way of strapping them to their legs or something like that. The other thing that you might want to consider is a power pack. Something like that. I find that the batteries will last longer in the device if you put it on airplane mode, so it's not trying to talk to the world while you're flying. If you do that, my Samsung pad will last 2.5 hours or so. Not long enough for a really long task, but not bad for everyday flying. If you're also using your device for tracking under B-traced or something like that, you'll probably want to have some extra power to keep you going for the duration of the flight. I'm still a bit undecided about how safe it is to carry these lithium-ion bombs with you, but I've done it and it works quite well. So how do you get started? First of all, you got to get your XCSoar software, and you can get that on the XCSoar website or from Google Play if you're using an Android version, as most of us are. So you download the software or the application, get it going, and then you need a whole bunch of files. You need your terrain map, and that comes from XCSoar. So you can go onto their website and choose where in the world you are, and they might have a map ready for you, as they do for this for New Zealand anyway. You probably want an airspace file. Where you get your airspace files is a little bit, there's a few different sources, and I'm not sure how up-to-date they are. That airspace file that's shown under that point is the one on the PGC's website, and it's my favorite because I know what's in it. I don't think the GNZ website, if you look at the North Island, it's dated 2017, which is probably okay. I don't think there's been too many changes since then. But if you go to that link where it shows there, it gives you the 2019 update of the airspaces.
No IFR aircraft flying, we mightn't need airspace files anymore. What a bonus.
Well, that's true. And waypoints. The waypoints have actually changed. It changes, all the number waypoints are gone, and they're now shown by 4-letter codes, which is, it's probably quite good when you get used to it. And they're all collected together under the GNZ's website under gliding.net.nz. And then you find usually the Matamata waypoints. And I think Rob Lyon and Tim and others have done some work to sort of coordinate the codes so there's not too many overlaps, and also they're quite detailed stuff. So in the waypoint file, there's quite often some information about the waypoint that you might want to know. There's some optional things. XCSoar gives you a chance to have a text file, which is just checklists, which you can make yourself. You can download task files from other software, like if you've got CU, or maybe someone will send you one. And once you've got all the settings you want, you can store it in a profile, which you can share between yourselves, or you might use to transfer from one device to another, or maybe you'll have one profile for racing tasks and call up another profile if you're on an AAT day. Once you get into it, it gives you some quite useful defaults, but it's really, really powerful, and there's lots and lots of choices to make. And you're certainly going to want to get in there and play with it and customize it to your preferences. And possibly you might want to connect it to some instruments. So you can, if you've got the right wiring and things like that, connect it to your other glider instruments. It makes it a lot more powerful if you've got a more accurate GPS, or if you have a pressure altimeter of some sort. That helps a lot. And you can also connect it to FLARMs, and it will show on your map FLARM alerts and other aircraft flying around. So that's, I think you can also have switches which detect flap positions and gear doors and things like that. So it's all in the software, but that's probably beyond most of us who are looking for a free little tool. And then you got to mount it somehow, and I think there's an idea that's got a suction cup on it. I think it's probably a better idea to get a ram ball and mount it in your glider so you're not suctioning to the canopy, but that's up to you. I think most of the club gliders have ram balls in them, so you shouldn't have to suction your thing to the canopy for most of them. Here's a screen view. One of the things that it's not very good at is a replay function, which it technically has, but it's a bit buggy. But this is just one possible screen view. It's got some information on the left and the right. You can change the number of boxes you see and have almost infinite amount of different boxes that you can decide to look at. I'm not sure if people can see my mouse.
We can.
Can you see that? Oh, thanks, Tim. This is actually showing how far it thinks you can glide to. And it's based on your McCready setting and your glider polar and the wind and things like that. So that's quite useful. These are airfields, and they're colored red because it doesn't think you can get to them safely. So you can glide to those, but I think at that recording there was a safety altitude built into it, so it's not at the safety altitude. This is set to be track, to be north up. You can change it so it's track up. And I've gone back and forth and debated with other people about which way helps my situational awareness the best. It's something you can change. That shows you the way to your waypoint. So we're going to a start at Gordon, 7.5 Ks away. It takes 10 minutes to get there. And when I got there, I'd be negative 600 feet. The wind will show up here. The McCready setting is here, and it's saying that at McCready setting, it's suggesting that you should be flying around 59 knots. And in this box, it's saying the best alternative, if I get caught short, is still a Matamata. And this is showing me the total climb of the last climb. So that's just one screen view. Sorry, if you look down, my mouse is still going, I hope. If you look down here, that shows you're in cruise mode. It will automatically change when it detects you circling into thermaling mode. And there's a little glider down there that shows what you are. And you can have completely different boxes in thermaling mode. These are mostly the same, except now I've got the climb in the last 30 seconds and the amount that I've gained since I've entered that thermal. And another thing which I'm not sure is useful, but might be, is when you start thermaling, it'll drop this little mark in the thermal. And you can set that little mark to drift with the wind. So if you come back and you're 1,000 feet lower, that mark will be located some way upwind of where it was when you left it. So if you sort of go around a mark and then you want to find the thermal that you left on your way in, you should be able to find this little symbol there. I'll just flip over to the this screen here. This is actually the this is the actual software sitting on the ground here, and the way you switch from one window to another is just swipe it. So there I've got a slightly different window for AAT tasks, so you don't see much change, but instead of these two boxes, which showed an alternative destination and the total of the last climb, here's another box that shows you 50 Ks down the flight, and it shows you all your airspaces in a sort of graph sticking out in front of you. And the blue line is your, this blue line there is your glide slope. So if you're trying to sort of figure out in some of the more complicated airspaces where they're coming and going, this is quite a good view. So you're just swiping sideways to change between views. Now it will change automatically between a cruise mode and a circling mode and a final glide mode. So you can set up completely different boxes for any of those things. So if I think I'll just come back to that. So I think Steve is quite keen on seeing his glide ratio. So you can set up some of these boxes to show your current glide ratio or your glide ratio needed to get to a waypoint or to finish the task. So quite powerful stuff. A lot of the calculations depend on your McCready setting. So you just click in there and you can change your McCready setting. And so now it's telling me to go 78 kilometers or 78 knots rather than 56 because it's got a better McCready setting. So I'm not sure if that's all clear as mud. One of the harder things to learn is how to talk to the thing when you're flying along. And it depends on your device to some extent. So this device has got 3 buttons on the bottom. So one brings up the menu, another goes back. My phone, on the other hand, which I've lost, has only 1 button. Here it is here. So I don't have 3 buttons on the bottom. So you actually have to double tap the screen in order to bring up the menu, which when you're shaking around in flight can be a bit of a problem. So the actual manipulation of the controls to some extent depends on your device. But it does give you a number of ways of controlling the thing using finger swipes. So there are a whole bunch of things, and it probably pays if you use this a lot to get to know these things. So some of them are quite intuitive, and others you sort of have to remember. And so zooming in and out is I think fairly straightforward. This one here, the pan, they're trying to make a P symbol. But on your screen, if you've got a touch screen, using 2 fingers puts it into pan mode. So if you're using 1 finger, it'll zoom or do one of these other things. But if you put 2 fingers, it'll flip into pan mode so you can swipe your way to whatever it is you wanted to see. And this list waypoints is supposed to be an L, and tasks. Analysis is sort of an A if you've got the right sort of imagination and status. The others you just have to sort of memorize, or you just sort of get used to them. You can always use your device and bring up the menu and find your way to those things without knowing these things. But this is just a good thing that works on all the touch screens, and is actually quite good when you're flying around. To try to hit those little controls on the device can be a bit hard at times. So we'll just go back into the thing. And so if I wanted to zoom, just zoom in, zoom out. So just, it's quite intuitive, that one. If I wanted to pan, I could do, sorry, I didn't do that right. Box like that, and now I'm into panning mode. And it's called up some other controls there. So I'm not zooming, I'm just moving this around. What else? Just a straight sideways changes the screen. So there's the AAT screen that I've set up. There's that other information screen. Go back into the cruising screen. If you want to list of waypoints, do an L. And you can find your waypoints. You can highlight one. Select it. Now just want to, it'll give you a bunch of information about it. Go to Drury, tells you about the frequency, the runways. And I can hit go to, and now now all my navigation stuff is oriented towards Drury, which I've just selected. If you want to play with tasks, that's the shortcut into there, the task screen. And there's a status screen. Do a big S. Tells you about your flight, bunch of information about where you are in the task. If you want to see what your flight time's been, there's some information there. So that's just a big S. And then this is where you would get a barograph and a bunch of other information about thermal speed and stuff like that. So using those swipey things are quite a good thing to do. But to get the basic menu, it's like a check mark. So that brings up the menu, and then all the other things are within these menus. If you've zoomed and you want to go back to the automatic zoom, do that. And that automatic zoom changes according to how close you are to the next waypoint. It starts zooming in as you get there. And normally on a circling screen, you might be zoomed out here and you start thermaling, and most of the thermal screens, it changes the zoom for you right away so you can see what's going on. So that's the basic how to talk to it information. Now there are a few things which I'll point out. That there's features, it's feature-rich sort of software, and we can't possibly do it all, and I don't know them all. But there's some useful stuff that it's worth knowing that it can do, and then you'll be able to find it later. So one we talked about is just changing the screen. Just swipe, horizontal swipe will flip between screens which you set up previously to show the information you want. There's also a what here. So that works a couple different ways. I can, if I can't remember what's the height of the airspace over here, I can double click there. If I go into info and what's here. Okay, so that will tell me that, hey, that airspace is 45 to 9,500. Or if I wanted to know about Matamata airfield, I click on that, and I can ask it for some details. It will tell me things, whatever is recorded in the waypoint file. If I want, that's where the plane is now. If I go into pan mode, I can put the center cursor over here, and now it's asking me what's here. So I'll go over there, and there's all the information about what it knows around that point, including you know, from where I am now, it's 25.8 k's away, and the arrival height is negative 2,500 feet. So if you said, can I get there? You can just go into the what's here and give it a click, and it'll tell you the information, but it'll also tell you whether it thinks you can get there or not. I think it's a bit touchy, but you can, when your aircraft is centered there, you can just double click somewhere and it puts a dot up there and it will tell you what's there. Doesn't seem to be working with this mouse version, but it does work on the screen. If you touch the thing and hold your finger there for a second or two, sometimes the what's here will come up for that point that you touched rather than where you are. Another thing that's sometimes useful is the checklist file. So you go into info, checklist. Now, this is just a text file and you put in whatever you want. I have a checklist file here which has got a bunch of radio frequencies on different pages, MBZs, CFZs, air traffic control, actual checklists. So here's the G and Z checklists. Don't actually expect us to refer to these in flight, but this stuff might come in handy. The other thing that you might find useful is you're flying along, you're on a nice task, and you're getting low, and you've decided to abandon the task. And so you can, under nav, you get a bunch of alternatives, and it will suggest nearby places where waypoints which are marked as landable. These are all red, so it doesn't think you can get there, but those are what the computer thinks are your best bet. So, and then you can choose one of these alternates and hit go to, and then all your navigation data will be referenced to that alternative spot. There's also a abort task, which I can't find. But if you abort your task, it will give you sort of lines to all the nearby landing points from your waypoints. So it doesn't know anything about the paddocks, of course, but if there are landing points around, then it will give you some suggestions. So I guess I should pause after all that talking and just see if there are any questions or comments or people who have found different ways of doing that sort of thing.
Dave, just a quick question there. You're talking about sort of potential landing spots there. Do you have to record those manually, or is there a set of them in there somewhere that you can load?
Yeah, the answer to that is in the waypoints. So in the waypoints file, you can see all these ones which are marked as potential landable things. So these are all airfields. So it just goes from your waypoints. Now you can have your own waypoint file. I think people have done that, have got their own files of waypoints with paddocks or farm strips or landable areas. So these are the official G and Z waypoints. I think probably the Telpo ones, they might have done a more thorough job in marking potential waypoints, but all XCSoar knows is what's in the waypoints. So, Derek, were you going to ask us something?
Just for myself. Sorry, no. Have I switched my microphone on? I didn't mean to. Sorry.
That's all right.
Dave, Royden. Look, font size, when you're in the air, of course, it's very difficult to read a lot of that stuff, like waypoints. Can we increase the font sizes?
Certainly of the labels in the map, you can change the sizes, and you can change whether it gives you a short code or a long code, or
Okay.
or turns them off. These commands, unfortunately, you can't turn on or off. Being able to see these things, especially with a small device, can be a problem.
Mm, mm.
One of the tricks to make it a bit clearer is, I think this will, if I go into display, I can turn the terrain off, and then I get a lines on a white background, which sometimes I've done when it's quite bright. I think I can see that easier
Yes.
in the sunlight with sunglasses, rather than the full terrain map.
Yeah, certainly that's the way I use it.
Sorry, Jim. I was thinking, Dave, more so when you're in a waypoint page, where all the information is listed, it's still very small fonts. And I wonder whether you could increase the size of those, not so much of what's on the map.
Not as far as I know. So if you go into there, you get all these, and most of this stuff you would probably do on the ground. If you're getting low, and you could, there's a rather shorter list of alternates if you want to take its suggestions. But no, you can't change the font of this sort of detail. So try to do most of that on the ground.
You might find if your phone's too small, you could buy a bigger tablet, and the scale of all the text will depend on the resolution of the screen. So you want a lower resolution screen for bigger text.
Yeah.
So maybe you should get one of these instead of one of these. As I've had to. Okay, I think the next thing we'll talk about is entering tasks. And there's two ways of entering tasks. So we'll go into the nav screen and tasks. Clear all that, and you can just start it manually from here. So I'm going to add a turn point, and we'll start at NZMA. I won't do it that way, sorry. I'll go back and just choose it out of the list. So start at the Matamata airfield. And then we'll go to Wardville. And then we'll go to Matamata Cemetery. And then Walton. Which is there. And we'll finish. You could do that. This is the, what I'm sketching out here is the club beginner's course, the 26K course. So, Matamata, or the airfield, Wardville, Matamata Cemetery, Walton, back to the airfield. So that is the club course. It's 25 Ks, 4 legs. If you're going to manage the thing, so go into the rules and make it a racing task. That one has a maximum start height of 2,000 feet and it's got a maximum finish. Got to be at least 2,000 when you finish, and no more than 3,000 when you start. So this one starts with a line. If we want to change that to a cylinder, you go into the points. There's the little sketch of the course, but we wanted that to be a start cylinder, a radius half a K. And then I can go through other tasks, if all the other points, if I want to. So now you can see that that task is now entered in there, and it's ready to point me to the airfield and lead me around that task. The other way of entering tasks is from a file. So you may have created a task in CU or been given a task. I've got this file with all the PGC club tasks, so I've decided I'm going to do the Catlin Trophy task, and so I just load that, and so there's that task changed from a file. So I've put on the club website all the club tasks if you want to use them, or you could create your own task in CU and then just load it in from a file into XCSoar. I just wanted to point out a slight difference with AAT tasks, assigned area tasks, I think that's what it's called. More tasks. So this isn't an official club task. It's one I made just for playing around with today. So it starts here, goes up to the swamp, and then down to Pateru and back home. So it can be a very short task or a very long task. And so I'm just going to put the display back the way it was with the terrain on. One of the things that is quite good with AAT tasks, it will show you how. Oh, sorry, I forgot to change it to an AAT task. So if it knows it's an AAT task, so the rules of that, it's an AAT, and we'll give it an hour and a half. It will actually calculate how far it thinks you should go into the task in order to get back 5 minutes over the hour and a half. And that depends on the wind and the McCready settings. So I've got a McCready set at 1, so it's not suggesting I go very far into those circles. But if it was a better day and the McCready was 3 or 4, it's now suggesting you go farther into the circles. So as someone who's has trouble with calculations, I find that quite a very useful sort of thing to do. Now, it doesn't take tactics. You might want to go farther into the first circle and shallower into the next circle, but it will keep updating that. So if I go farther into that, then it will be giving me a target that's not as far into the last circle, because it's aiming to get you home 5 minutes after the designated time. And so that's, you can see here that it's got a predicted time 5 minutes late. So that's quite a good feature, which I only recently found, which I wish I knew about before.
Dave, do you want to show how to, let's say you do want to go into that first circle quite far. Do you want to show how to actually specify where in that circle you're aiming to go?
I'd love to, but I don't know how.
Oh, use the target thing that you had before to click on this. If you've got a touch screen, you just tap on the circle somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, somewhere in there, you should be able to click on that and go into it.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So there you go. I can change stuff in here.
You actually tap on the circle on the map, I think.
So, okay. Excellent. Thanks, Tim. So now if I do that, it gives me a target back there. These dotted lines are sort of, it's a line of sort of equal score. So if you find yourself flying along the dotted line, you're not getting any more progress into your AAT task. Now you may be headed for some good lift, but if you're just going for more points, don't go along the dotted line. Very good to know. Thanks, Tim. Close that. Stop sharing that. So I just wanted to mention a few things, and people might want to add to this, a few cautions. Do all your playing around on the ground as much as you can. As Royden pointed out, it's a bit hard to see, even harder to see when you're being bounced around. Try not to get too distracted in the air. It can be a tool to help your situational awareness, but it can also be a distraction. And so just remember to look out the window once in a while. And you can't trust it too much. It's really good. The calculations are right, but it doesn't know everything. It doesn't know what's coming. It may tell you you've got a comfortable glide slope back to home, but it doesn't actually know how much sink you're going to find in the way. And it doesn't really know, if your McCready's set right, or the bugs are set right, or that you got the right polar in there. So use it for a tool, particularly if you're just using it from your phone's GPS. I've turned off all the functions which depend on knowing the pressure very much. So all the vario functions, it can be a vario, it can beep at you, it can do a lot of vario type stuff, but if you're just going from your phone's GPS, I just turn those things off. It's just a tool. Just for interest, I wondered how good the polar was that it was suggesting for the Duo. And so the red lines out of the Duo flight manual, and this dotted line is the polar that the XCSoar was suggesting for that aircraft. So it's a little bit conservative. Instead of 46-1, it was giving us about 38-1. So if you're doing it for your own aircraft, you might want to consider that. Now when you get back, you want to use your logs. So you get your trace, it's on your device, look for XCSoar data/logs, and you'll find a file for the day. It's good for personal use. Relive the day, You can put it into other software. Club tasks and trophies, we're not too picky on that sort of thing. So you've done something good, send your trace off to Bob or Steve, and you might get a trophy from it. Online contest seems to accept these things without any complaint. So that gives you a very good way to participate in the online contest without having to buy a IGC logger. In theory, no good for contests. The rules is that you need a pressure, a device which measures pressure altitude rather than just GPS. And also no good for FAI badges and records. So if you don't have an IGC approved recording device, then you'll never get it through Edward. But otherwise, your log file is there. And so just plug it into something, look for somewhere in your device files, XCSoar data logs. By the way, XCSoar data is where you want to copy all the airspace and waypoint files and other things. Everything goes into XCSoar data. So that is sort of run through everything that I know about XCSoar that I can tell easily. I think you'll find that you get into it, you start playing with things, you'll decide which boxes, what you want all those boxes to show, or even if you want that many boxes and what's on them, and you'll probably have a different take on everything. So if you are interested, in order to get you started, I've put on the club website. So go to the glidingmatamata.co.nz and look under members, and it'll say XCSoar, and it will give you the files that I've used, which you're welcome to use as a base and start changing things on your own. But I'll probably delete that after a while because inevitably it will get out of date with waypoints and airspaces and things like that. But we'll leave it on for a few weeks, and you may find it easier to start from there rather than the XCSoar defaults.
Just a question. You talked about the 3 different screens you've got. How do you set up the number of screens?
Okay. If I just flip back to the program. You go under config and under system. It takes me a while to find it. Sorry, Julian, I wish I had a faster answer, but it's
all right.
What I would do.
You're doing what I've been doing and going, where the hell do I find this?
I would, early on, start at the top and go through them all. So
Yeah.
I think it's in look, but I'm not
here
sure.
it is here. Screen layout. So I've chosen 8 boxes split.
Right.
You can have all 8 on the top or on the left. Depends on the landscape or portrait orientation. So you can choose how many boxes and where to put them here. If you only wanted 4 instead of 8. So, under screen layout.
Right.
And then you go on to all the individual boxes, and so this is the main box, and it says auto, so it will automatically on its own flip between the cruise mode and the circling mode and the final glide mode. I set up another one here called cross section. With that cross section, it just looks 50K ahead. And then I've made my own here, which they call aux1, but that's the same as the regular one. But some of the cruise ones, I put some boxes in which only relate to AATs. So if I had an AAT task, I could just swipe horizontally till I found that box, which is just something I've set up. So you can choose the you can choose almost infinite permutations, combinations, cruise, circle, and final glide, and then you can set up your own. So you do that in this next box.
Right.
Under
Thank
cruise, there's all of those things.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else? I'm glad to have learned a couple of things today as well.
Yeah, just where is this recording going to be available? Because I know I want to go back and particularly look at that AAT one.
I'll send an email around with how to get it. I think we set it up to go on the cloud, so it lives in Zoom somewhere. So it will either be a link to Zoom or we'll get it off and put it on YouTube or something. But sorry, I'll send an email around to let people know once I figured that out.
Hey, Dave, it's Jared here. Can you put that into the Facebook note for this meeting or send it to me to share with Auckland? Because I don't know how many Auckland people are listening in, but it's really useful. Thanks.
Okay. I think you obviously got notice of this meeting, Jared. So when I send you the instructions of how to access it, you can distribute however you like. Well, we can put it on Facebook as well.
Yeah, Facebook was how I heard about this, and I'm standing in the shed enjoying every minute. Thank you.
Dave, it's Ray Burns here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you do the same for me for Auckland Aviation Sports?
Yes. Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, it's Stephen here. Whereabouts is the manual? Is it easy to find?
Yes, easy to find. XCSoar.org.
Excellent, thank you.
And you have your choice of languages.
Dave, good morning. I would just like to point out that, I don't know if you can see my screen, but I managed to download a map which has every airstrip marked on it as a purple dot. I don't recall exactly where I got that from, but somebody was asking, do you have the land out points? Well, no, but the airstrips at least show up. Pretty sure I downloaded that map from the GNZ website, so I cannot be sure.
I don't know if anybody's interested, but I have the Latin longs for every airfield and visual reporting point in the AIP.
Okay. I don't know about visual reporting points. Most of the airfields would be in our normal waypoints, but perhaps we can refer that to Tim and Rob, who are doing a really good job at sorting out suggested waypoints. So Tim is staying quiet, so we'll take that as having
Sure.
volunteered to do that.
The VFR reporting points in particular are very useful because if you want to talk to air traffic control, you can just key up the nearest reporting point and tell them exactly how far away you are from it. The land strips, there's a lot of land strips in the country, and the problem is that data is often out of date. They're often turned into paddocks with sheep on them, so it's almost useful.
The VR visual reporting points, they're in the CAA register. That can easily be done. I think there is a question that some people with older devices might have a limited number of waypoints that they can store. And then the other danger is that we make so many that it's hard to find the ones you want. So there is a bit of a trade-off there, but I think if there are resources like that we can share, might be a really good idea. Hi, Nick. Were you going to?
I'm just trying to get my head around Zoom. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just fiddling with the controls.
Right. Okay. Well, that was a something to think about while we're not flying. Right? And thank you everyone for coming. There's, according to this thing, there's 29 people here, which is really good. And I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to use some of these toys.
Yeah, so thanks, Dave. If I can just jump in, we've managed to sort of fill in an hour of our day while we're locked down, which is and had some quite good discussion. And remember what gliding was like when